The great leaders, the great communicators, great salespeople, they allow their audience to self-discover. And if you allow your audience to self-discover, they'll own it. But if you drive it down their throats, it ain't theirs. There's leaders out there that are very strong communicators, but they don't develop other leaders. And so the company dies as soon as they leave. And the reason is because they pontificated so hard. They might be eloquent in their own pontifications, but they never ask great questions to make the people around them become better thinkers, better problem solvers, better leaders. You see, as leaders, it's not our job to give people the answer. It's our job to ask the perfect question. That's our job.
Hello and welcome back to the Connected Mindset Live. I'm your host, Greg Tomchick. Another beautiful day with two guests from Virginia. It's an exciting day for the Connected Mindset Live. Each week we bring you the stories, strategies, and people that are going to help you better connect with the world around you. We live in a world now where there's so many opportunities to connect. And how do we make sure those are trusted connections? How do we make sure we're connecting to the right things for us? I think there's a lot to unpack there. Our guest today talks a lot about sales and marketing side if you do your research on him, and we'll make sure all the links are in the show notes. But one of the things he really talks about is story and trust. And you guys know how big I am on having to go through different processes of trusting myself through baseball, through business, through some of the obstacles that I've gone through that you guys are aware of. And how do we tell that story and allow it to benefit the world around us? So we have Mr. Marcus Sheridan with us. Marcus, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, Greg, happy to be here, man.
Excellent. So one of the ways we like to start the show is, what mission are you on specifically, and what are you hoping that the folks listening in today walk away with?
Yeah, so I'm oddly obsessed with communication in all of its forms. I have been since I can remember, probably since I was in my teenage years. And really what I do today is I teach businesses and individuals how to connect on a much deeper level with their audience so as to win more trust. And sometimes, we call that sales, sometimes we call that marketing, and sometimes we just call that leadership. And if somebody really understands the art of extraordinary communication, they excel really in any of those fields. I mean, because the principles always remain true. And so, I think that's the thing that is a bit of a lost art in society today, is this art of communication. You don't see it really taught in schools. You don't see it taught in university. You don't see it taught in organizations. And, because of that, we're struggling to have better conversations, to ask better questions, and to make those deeper connections. So, yeah, that's my mission, to fix that.
Wow, I love it. I know I've felt many of those pains and continue to, trying to navigate, exercising my communication muscle in the world, whether it's in a relationship, in a new business environment, or, going out and speaking to a new community on a topic that they may know about, but aren't able to connect to. And you mentioned, helping people better connect. That's what we're all about in this show. And I think one of the things that comes to my mind that I've struggled with, I know many people listening in have, is where do you start to improve your communication? I know we have to go through those hard, dark phases of someone saying that doesn't make sense. You need to communicate that better. And that obviously shocks us to communicate a little better next time for that specific person or audience. But where do you start when you go into a group or go and, talk to an individual about communication? Because I love how you put it. A lot of people say sales, marketing, communication, leadership, but there's a lot of threads through these that are very important. And where do you help folks kind of start their process to better communicate? Because I think we all want to be better communicators, but there's nothing that contextualizes to become better besides doing it.
Well, I think it's safe to say that we all want to be better, but most people aren't willing necessarily to do what it takes to be better. There is a big difference between the two. You see, when it comes to communication, we get pretty defensive actually, because this is the thing that we've been doing for a long time, right? And so for someone to ever tell us our baby's ugly, it's a hard pill to swallow. And I don't see that as my job. And I don't go around telling people their baby's ugly. They figure it out pretty quickly. We'll do certain, like, let's say, tests, activities, exercises with salespeople, with leaders, and quickly they will realize, oh my gosh, I thought that I was, like, for example, good at asking questions, but actually this is quite a struggle for me. The divide that I've seen between the ones that become great versus not generally starts with self-awareness. So if you want to become a great, like truly extraordinary communicator, your self-awareness, which means you have situational awareness, has to be very, very high. So, I speak for a living. I've given about, I don't know, 800 keynotes around the world in the past 14 years of speaking professionally. And I am very, very honest with myself with every single gig. I know in each moment of the gig what's landing, what's not landing, and I'm willing to look at it in a way of, yeah, it's working, here's why, or this isn't working, here's why, without too much emotion that's attached to it. So, in other words, you're
Mhm.
gonna have these, like, moments all the time where you're like, "Oh, this is flaming out. This ain't working right now."
Yeah.
You gotta adjust, right? You gotta adjust, but you can't sit there and judge yourself to death. You just gotta iterate. You gotta fix. You gotta evolve, right? So, those folks that are like, you know what, I actually do have a lot to work on. I could be a lot better. I've been obsessed with effective communication for 30 plus years, and I am, like, on this journey as hard today as I was when I was a teenager. It's not changed for me. It's not something that you just master, you got it, because, I've seen people become pretty decent, Greg, and then they lose the skill. All right. So that happens too. It's
Yeah.
really, really sad when you see that happens. But most people never develop the skill at all.
Yeah.
And I would say that one of the other, fundamental reasons is they just don't understand the art of the perfect question. They don't understand how to ask questions, and they don't think in the form of a question. And because they don't think in the form of a question, more often than not, they force their ideas on others. They don't create breakthroughs with those that they're talking to. They don't know how to induce the right energy in the moment, which is critical,
Yeah.
right? So there's, like, all these beauties that come with learning to ask the perfect question. Again, skill not taught, and that's a struggle for a lot of folks.
Yeah, that's so critical. They don't really teach in traditional schooling how to ask questions.
Mm-mm.
And one of the things I always say is questions are the best answers, because if you can't ask the question, they can't read your mind. The other person or the audience can't read your mind of what you're thinking. Not yet, at least. It's not on a teleprompter, every thought that you have. So what does that look like? How do you dissect questions, and how do you think about how to ask better questions from wherever you're standing today?
Yeah, well, I've got a company called the Question First Group,
Mhm.
and what we do is we actually teach leaders and salespeople how to ask extraordinary questions,
Yeah.
and that's one of the core pillars of the business. And there is such a thing as a perfect question, but to really learn how to ask them the right way is you have to understand what we call what I call the three P's of a perfect question. The three P's of a perfect question. So what are the three P's? So the first one is progress. Progress. The person needs to feel, if you're asking a question, that you're making progress towards something. Now,
Mhm.
you're not doing this if somebody has ever said to you, "Why are you asking me that?" So if anybody's ever heard that before
Yeah.
as a response, "Why are you asking me that question right now?" It's because they don't feel like you're making progress. If somebody tells you, "I already told you," see, it means they think you weren't listening by the question you just asked, i.e., you're not making progress right now. So, the first P of a perfect question is the receiver needs to feel like you're making progress. Now, the second, similar to the first, but there's a nuance difference. The second is you got to feel like there is purpose to the question. Okay? So you got progress and you got purpose. So purpose means you have a point. Progress means you're going somewhere. So if somebody ever says to you, where are you going with this right now? They don't see where you're going. They need to feel like you're going somewhere. So they need to feel like you're making progress. They need to feel like there's a purpose to your question. And so those are the first two. Now the third one is the one that a lot of people kind of screw up. It gets a little bit harder, which is path. So progress, purpose, path. A great question allows the receiver to find a path for the answer pretty quickly. It doesn't mean the answer is easy to give, but they know the path to get it. So let me give you an example, Greg. If I said to you, what's your greatest memory? Ah, man, that's really broad. It's like your brain can go in a million different directions or paths. Whereas if I said to you, what's your best memory with your mom as a child? Suddenly, you've got a really clear path and you could find that memory quickly. So that makes the question much more effective. And so if somebody ever says to you, I don't understand what you mean by that, well, there's a path problem to the question. If somebody says, I'm confused by the question, there's a path problem to the question.
Yeah.
The brain is looking to find it, but they can't find it, can't find the path. So again, it's not so much about the answer, it's about the path to get the answer that you have to supply. So the people that ask great, extraordinary questions, they're literally creating new pathways that the person didn't even know existed within their brain to find these answers. So that's why the best salespeople in the world have discovery that is so incredible that the person will say things like, the prospect will say things like, well, biggest indicator is they say, no one has ever asked me that question before. So I ask the different salespeople I work with and my own teams, I'm like, when was the last time a prospect said to you, no one has ever asked me that before? That's a sign that you're on the right path. You're doing a good job, right? And so this is, if you understand the 3 Ps, then you understand why any of your questions went wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's an incredible framework. I haven't heard it put that way. I've heard the purpose piece, because people are trying to make meaning of the questions that you're asking, and if it doesn't mean something to them, then they don't feel the progress or have the ability to see the path. So they're like, it's not worth my time to go down that avenue to answer your question. And,
that's right.
Wow, that definitely helps contextualize it.
Yeah, and let me give you a couple let me give you some super tricks or tips on this. And I'll just let me teach you a technique that if you learn this technique, it'll just revolutionize your relationships. I'm talking personally, professionally, etc. Sales, you become the best salesperson on your team immediately. You become like this extraordinary communicator, as a leader. And this is how it works. I call it the pushback pivot. So the way the pushback pivot works, Greg, is in life you're constantly met with resistance. Somebody says something to you like, that's a dumb idea. Or, I think what you said earlier was ridiculous. Or in sales situation, they might say, you guys are so expensive. Or, geez, that's much higher than I thought it was going to be. Right? It's all types of resistance points that we're met with. Team member might come to you and say, I thought that meeting this morning sucked, right? Okay, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's just like a resistance point. It's a negative statement that somebody says to you. So the way the pushback pivot works is whenever you get pushback, that resistance point, you take the negative phrase and you just pivot and you use that phrase right back with them. So let me give you an example. If you talk to most salespeople, Greg, and you said to them, what is your answer when someone says, my goodness, you guys are really expensive? 90+% of salespeople justify. Well, I mean, we're expensive. That might be true, but let's look at it. That's what they say. That's what they say. I know this because I work with enough of them. But that's the wrong answer. The proper answer is expensive. Tell me more.
Yeah.
That's it. You take the negative phrase and you have them tell you more. Now, that could be expensive. Tell me more. Expensive. Tell me about that. Expensive. What do you mean by that? So, for example, Greg, if I said to you, I think your idea is ridiculous. All right. What's the pivot for that?
My idea is ridiculous. Tell me more.
Yeah. You just say ridiculous. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Take the singular phrase. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The singular phrase.
Word. Yeah.
Yeah. Your spouse, your partner, your loved one comes to you and says something like, I'm really frustrated with your behavior. You say, my behavior? Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Really? Like, that's what you do. That's it. Now, when you learn this, it doesn't this will lead you to the point where you never flinch again. Like, you can literally go through life, never flinch. But you just got to learn to pivot.
Yeah.
Somebody says to you, I just don't think your company's big enough. All right, not big enough. So tell me more about that. Someone says, I'm worried about your negative reviews. Negative reviews? Please tell me more. Yeah, I had a conversation with one of your workers, and he really, he really bothered me. Oh, he bothered you? I'm sorry to hear that. Tell me more. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You just do it over and over again. The problem is, let's just look at the example, Greg. If somebody says to you, man, you guys are expensive. Do you even know what expensive means?
Yeah.
Could it mean 5% more, 10% more, 20% more? Could they just be asking you the question to test you? You see, you don't know what they mean. So we go through life assuming that we actually know what the person just said. You don't know what they said. Not until you ask at least 2 or 3 more questions. So that's called the law of 3. The law of 3 basically means this. You do not get to the core of the problem, the issue, the need, until you ask at least 3 questions, almost every single time. That's how it works, right? And so let me give an example of this, Greg. I might say at the beginning of a team meeting, all right, team, so what type of qualities do we need to bring to this meeting today to make sure it's a great meeting? Somebody might say, we need to be present. Okay, that's not enough of an answer. That's a good answer to start, but that's not the answer. You say, okay, presence. Tell me more about that. The person says, well, I mean, we just need to make sure we're here right now. We need to really be fully here. Okay, great. Now, what does being fully here look like? Well, it means I put away my phone. It means I'm leaning in. It means I'm giving my greatest energy. I'm like, okay, great. And if you do those 3 things, if you put away your phone, if you lean in, you give all your energy, what's the impact going to be on this room? It means it's going to be electric. That's exactly right. And that's what we need. Boom, moving to the next person. You see, we just asked 3 questions to go further down that vein. And then we actually got to it. The way you know you are at the core of an answer is if you can feel it deeply or you can see it clearly. That's how you know these things. It's no different than if somebody says to you, like, let me give you another example. It could be a ridiculous thing. What's your favorite color? The person says, well, it's green. Okay. Well, what makes you say green? See, they've never been asked that before.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're going to be like, well, now let me give you another little tip or trick.
Yeah.
The way you know you're good at asking deeper questions is you count the number of light bulb moments you induce in your audience. This could be, again, personally, professionally. sales situation, leadership situation, one-on-one, doesn't matter. A light bulb moment always has physical indications from your audience. And there's verbal indications, manifestations. So a light bulb moment or an aha moment usually includes something like this. The person says, I think I have it. Or someone says, come to think of it. You see, that when they're sitting there saying, well, to tell you the truth, see, all those mean the same thing. They're having a light bulb moment. You created a new path for them to go down. They're discovering something new. They're learning, they're self-discovering. The great leaders, the great communicators, great salespeople, they allow their audience to self-discover. And if you allow your audience to self-discover, they'll own it. But if you drive it down their throats, it ain't theirs. So this is why, too, that there's leaders out there that are very strong communicators, but they don't develop other leaders.
Yep.
And so the company dies as soon as they leave. And the reason is because they pontificated so hard. They might be eloquent in their own pontifications, but they never ask great questions to make the people around them become better thinkers, better problem solvers, better leaders. You see, as leaders, it's not our job to give people the answer. It's our job to ask the perfect question. That's our job. And if you ask the perfect question, they're going to start to have those light bulb moments. They have a light bulb moment. That means you're developing a leader right now. If you're developing a leader, what that means is you're getting less texts, less phone calls on Saturdays saying, hey, we got a problem over here, boss. How do we handle it? Because you develop a team that will handle it. That's how it works.
Yep.
You feel me?
I do. Yeah.
So these are things that you're just not taught in school. They're not taught in organizations. And so when I say this is something that, my company is constantly working with organizations on, man, I mean, this is life-changing stuff. Just the pushback pivot alone, Greg, if somebody learns that skill, my goodness, it eliminates 90% of the arguments you ever have again. I mean, you just find yourself, you just don't argue. You find yourself not on the retreat. You're not backpedaling. You're saying, tell me about that. Now, you got to have the right energy. If your wife, your partner says, I'm pissed at you, you're not going to say, pissed? Tell me about that. You say, what's going on? That's it. What's going on?
Yeah.
Right? But that's it. You got to think question first. Question first.
Yep. Yeah, when it comes to light bulb moments, because I think back to the best pitching coaches I had in baseball and how the way that they communicated made me rethink, or it made me improve how I was going to go about the practice for that day. So I was having light bulb moments more with those coaches, and and you hit on it earlier, with those leaders that are asking the questions that get to, or the speaker that is getting more light bulb moments, or the leader that's getting more light bulb moments.
Yeah, I mean, coach comes up to you
more.
Yeah, coach comes up to you and says, "Man, your curveball sucks today." That doesn't help.
Yeah.
Coach comes up to you and says, "Tell me about your curve today." It's not dropping, coach. All right. Why do you think that is? Well, and then all of a sudden, you got to think for yourself, man.
Yep, definitely.
Because coach ain't always going to be there to teach you how to throw the hook.
No.
Right? I mean, you've got to fix this stuff real time yourself sometimes. And if you don't learn how to create those paths, you ain't going to get there. So the great coaches understand how to do this. That's why it doesn't need to tell you, hey, man, you suck today. But if besides, you're not going to own that as much. Whereas if you say, man, I really suck today, that's that self-awareness, right? That we talked about earlier. All right. Okay. I agree. Yeah, you suck today. So let's look at why. And now all of a sudden, you can start to explain why. You, not the coach, you. Great coaches draw all that out.
Yeah, how do we get others? And I know it's through question, but how have you found that when an environment is not having any light bulb moments? Like, think about a company. We've all been in that company before where they're just they're not asking questions throughout the day. They're following a process, and they're not having those light bulb moments. How do you start the process of getting people to ask those questions when it's not in their innate ability to do that? I know there's a lot of people like yourself. You've
Well, it is in
been
their
interested
innate
in,
ability. They have just formed really bad habits.
habits, the bad habits. Yeah.
Right. And the biggest issue, coming back to self-awareness, is this starts with leadership generally, right? It's very trickle down. And most of these leaders think they're great communicators, and they don't have the ability to look in the mirror and say, yeah, I'm dropping the ball in terms of the way I communicate. And they've probably created a team and an environment and a culture where the team doesn't feel comfortable calling them for, calling this person out, the CEO out, saying, hey, we got an energy problem, because so much of communication is energy. And a lot of folks don't understand how this works, but it's not just the words we use, it's the story our face tells. That's a really, really big one, right? Your energy. I said earlier about that flinch, about the flinch.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a great communicator, you have to learn to control your dang face. And you got to make sure that when somebody brings you a poop sandwich, that you don't flinch the first second it comes. So, in other words, if I have a team member that comes up to me and says, yo, boss, I screwed up today. I'm like, what happened? See?
Yeah.
It's already, we got a bad energy.
Yeah.
Someone comes up to me and says, yo, boss, I screwed up today. All right, tell me about that. Boom. It's like, I'm here for it. I'm ready for it. Let's go. Let's go. Because it's going to happen. And we're already living in the solution. So I don't see this generally fixed until the boss and the leadership team say, we need to be better communicators. And oftentimes that never happens.
Yep.
But occasionally what happens is they think their sales team stinks at communication, and you get into it. Like I've gotten into organizations and I'm like, oh, I see what we got here. We got a leadership problem. Yeah, your sales team kind of stinks, but it's because the managers and the leaders, they don't know how to communicate, and they're just feeding off what everybody else has taught them, right? The examples. But unless you do consistent training, you're never going to become great. You got to get reps in. It's no different than practice. The problem is a lot of companies, when it comes to sales, they practice on their customers, not on themselves. What a tragedy. That's ridiculous. And you see this all the time. And so, like, can you imagine a baseball team that literally never practiced during the week, and they said, all right, let's work these kinks out come game time, y'all. That is what's happening. Can you imagine? Like, literally, this is what most sales teams are today, Greg. They are a baseball team that goes and watches, they discuss strategy in the locker room, but they never go out and they practice on the field. They just don't do that. And then they get their butts handed to them on the field, and they wonder why they're not having success, and they go back to the locker room, and they continue to talk about why they're not winning. They don't practice on the field. Do you know less than 90% of all salespeople will do one role play training a month? Unacceptable. Tragedy. That's an indictment on leadership. I was with a group of salespeople the other day, and this is great training, as always. Dude says to me afterwards, I've been in this industry 4 years. I've never done a training like this. 4 freaking years and never done a role play? What terrible leadership we have. It's a problem. That's a problem. And so this is what we're seeing. The great companies do not practice communication on their customers. The great leaders don't practice communication when it comes to the one-on-one. They do it beforehand. They do the reps. All right? They hit the field.
Inside, in their own head, like as far as just running through things in a clean way?
With others.
With others, yep.
with others.
Mhm.
So in other words, if I'm gonna promote a manager, I'm not gonna say, okay, here's a paper on the questions you should ask on a one-on-one. Give me a break. That's terrible. Say, all right, so now your manager, you're gonna start having one-on-ones with your team. Here's what the format looks like. Let's go practice. And we're gonna like drill and drill and drill,
Yeah.
and we're gonna keep drilling. And when I meet with that manager, I'm gonna say, all right, tell me about your last one-on-one. How'd it go? What was the energy? All right, what were some of the things that were said to you? What were the questions you asked? That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
But you don't see that. The best sales teams have role plays once a week. Once a week. Now, Greg, you can go out there and you can go meet 90 companies a day. One or two of them are going to say, we have role play trainings once a week. One or two, maybe. You might go 0 for 90. Think
Yep.
about that.
Mhm.
That's brutal.
Yep.
And we
Is it?
wonder
Yeah.
why we have bad closing rates. You
Mhm.
know why this happens, though, Greg? It's because leaders, they don't want to screw up in front of their team. So they know, well, if we do role plays, it means I'm putting myself in the line of fire as well as the manager here, as sales leader, sales manager. I got to set the bar. I got to set the tone. And so then all of a sudden, they're like, all right, let's just sit there and talk about pipeline all day long instead of doing the work that actually makes us more skilled to ask better questions, create deeper connections, and win more trust. You see, that's what we're trying to do. But yet we're sitting there talking about pipeline all day. Most sales leaders today stink as sales trainers. Stink.
Yep.
Just because you can look at pipeline doesn't mean that you're a good sales manager. Now, it's okay if like that ain't your thing, but you have to have someone on your sales team that is training everyone to be elite. You have to.
Yep.
Again, and this same for managers, same for dads, for
Yep.
moms, same deal. It's all the same.
Mhm. Do you think company-wise, or even for your kids, someone you're trying to help improve, like that manager you want to be the next CEO, or that, the person you're trying to, I guess, groom, what do you think? Is it just consistently doing it? When I think about trust, I think consistency is a critical part of it. Do
I'm
you
telling
feel
you,
like, yeah. Mhm.
every conversation you have with a team member can be a training moment if you're looking for it.
Mhm.
Let me give you an example. One time I was with one of my managers, had just this person had just started. I mean, just started. And teammate calls him up, there's a problem. And his response was not good. And it was like one of these situations where he was like, he just didn't handle it great. Told the person what to do. Person got a little bit frustrated. Nobody wins. As soon as the call's done, I said, how do you feel that call went? He said, I guess it didn't go well. I said, all right, tell me about that. See what I'm saying? And I've done that a million times. I didn't say, man, that call sucked.
Yep.
I said, how do you feel that call went? Probably didn't go too well. All right, tell me about that. Well, I mean, it went sideways. Okay, why do you think it went sideways? Well, it went sideways, I'm guessing, because, well, come to think of it, here comes the light bulb moment. Come to think of it, I didn't ask any questions. Okay, I agree. You didn't ask any questions. Is that okay? No, boss, not okay. All right, so if we had to go back in time, what questions would you have asked? Well, I guess I could have asked, here comes the light bulb. I could have asked such and such. Good. And if you had asked that, likely what would have been the response? Well, they probably would have said such and such. Good. And then what would you have said? Well, I probably could have followed with this. Okay, great. I feel you. Here's the thing, Greg. Every conversation ends with you're right. The question is, who's the one saying you're right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm a great leader, you come to me with a problem. At the end, me as the leader, I'm going to say to you, Greg, you are so right. That's exactly what I would have told you to do. Well done. You see, you feel good now. It's your idea. You own it. Whereas if we end the conversation, you say, Marcus, you are so right. Man, I knew I could come to you. You always solve my problems, man. You are the best leader I've ever had. You're the best manager in the world. Man, I love you, dude. I appreciate you so much. Hug, hug, kiss, kiss. Okay. You might feel good as a leader. You failed that person just now. You failed them utterly. Because the only thing you taught them just now is that you're awesome. And that when they have a problem, they better come to you.
The crutch. Yeah.
Now, most sales teams don't record sales calls. Most leaders never record any type of their meetings. You have to start recording your junk.
Yeah.
It's crazy what I mean, most companies we come into, they've never watched themselves. You know what the number one comment salespeople make when they watch themselves the first time? Number one comment, it'll surprise you, Greg. They say, man, I don't smile very much. Number one comment.
Wow.
Energy, baby.
Yeah.
Energy. Your smile has such an impact on the energy you manifest throughout any type of communication you experience. And so that's one of the first things we fix. We've got a smile problem with a lot of communication. Energy problem. Smile problem means you got an energy problem.
Yeah.
So you got to fix that energy problem if you want to manifest the best version of yourself and if you want to create real breakthroughs, real change.
And it starts with just that, like you said earlier, the self-awareness. And part of that self-awareness is the watching yourself and doing the uncomfort to get to those breakthrough moments of your development and communication.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, when I do sales trainings, there's occasions when I'll do a role play to show the example and I'll say, wait, let me do that again. That wasn't good. I'm the leader. And then I'll do the right version. So it doesn't happen a lot with me because I'm elite level, but it happens and I'm not embarrassed about it because I'm going to work out there's sometimes when we'll do a role play, I'm like, I haven't done this before. Let's work out the kinks together right now. See, that's the culture you want, man.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to like work out the kinks, embrace the messy, lean into the ugly right now. We know it's going to be sloppy. All that's good because it means we're growing, figuring it out.
How much of the ego at the leadership level, especially with sales teams, because there's veteran salespeople, there's new salespeople. A lot of it is not, I wouldn't say majority ego driven, but they're in a leadership position because, like you said earlier, they feel like we all feel like we have to have the answers, not the right questions. And when we don't have the answer, that's an attack on us. And when we feel like we don't have the answer multiple times, then we're getting attacked from everywhere. I'm curious how you kind of help kind of disseminate or help that disappear or have a better, cleaner battle with that individual's ego to be able to.
Here's the thing about ego. If I tell someone you got an ego problem, it usually don't fly.
Yeah.
Usually don't fly. Right? So we got to ask great questions. So I might go to a leader. If I see a leader's got some serious issues with ego, I'll go to that leader one-on-one privately. And I'll say things like, have you ever asked your team to give you feedback on specifically how you could improve? And most of the time they'll say, well, I mean, I'm sure they know they can come to me anytime. No. I'm asking you, have you ever gone to someone and said, if you could change one thing about me, what would it be? And I promise I won't get offended with any answer you give. Have you ever said that to any of your team members? Nope, I've never said that. All right, why not? Person's like, well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to show weakness, but I'm going to start to dig now, right? And then I'm going to say, would you be willing to do that? Because we're going to test it every time.
Yeah.
We're going to put them in uncomfortable situations. We're going to force that humility. We're going to force them to lose the ego. And so otherwise, I'm not going to work with them. I'm just not going to play that game. I don't need to.
Yep.
And so person's like, all right. And then I'll say, all right, so let's role play this. Because I don't believe they're going to do it. So I'm going to role play it with them. And then I'm going to come out and I'm going to like tell them something. Well, I kind of think you're a jerk in meetings sometimes. I want to see their face. I want to see how they react. I want to see the energy they give back. Are they going to use pivot? Or are they going to say, all right, bad energy. Tell me about that. Or are they going to say, what do you mean I got bad energy? Right? So you do role plays with leaders, they lose ego really, really fast. I do role plays with leaders all the time.
Yep.
All the time. And they quickly lose this facade of invincibility.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they're not going to be good in the meetings, and they're going to think their poo don't stink when it does.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've all been in those environments and been in those positions potentially ourselves where we didn't realize something until somebody said, this is what I'm seeing. So it's that reflection period. I think in relationships, it's the same way. We wait to ask or gain clarity on what the other person feels we can improve on, and unless we get into like an argument or a disagreement, or we're both going back and forth, not asking questions, but really giving each other statements of why we feel that they're wrong. And I've seen that in company environments as well. And it's so critical to get past that so you can figure out what the path forward is.
Yeah, I mean, there's this, sometimes the phrase safe space gets abused.
Yeah, it does.
But a true safe space is actually very, very important. But the way you create a safe space is through what we call vanguarding. Vanguarding is the process of knowing what could go wrong and getting in front of it. And so to create a safe space, let me give you an example. One of the things that we teach sales teams and leaders is what's called the honest agreement. Honest agreement is something that you should say at the beginning of a one-on-one, beginning of a sales appointment, doesn't matter what it is. So let's say we've been talking for a minute or two, Greg, on it's like our first sales call.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do the honest agreement, it's going to sound something like this. So, Greg, before we get started with our meeting today, this conversation is really important to me. And you're potentially going to spend a lot of money. And I know you don't want to make any mistakes, and I don't want you to make any mistakes. And so here's my commitment to you. As we're talking today, my commitment to you is I'm going to be very honest and candid. I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm also going to ask you questions that you've probably never been asked before. But the reason why I'm doing this is because we need to make sure we discover the actual problem and we offer the right solutions. Don't want to mess this up. So therefore, I'm going to be incredibly honest and frank with you. Is that fair? You're going to say, yes. Now, I'm going to say, now at the same time, Greg, I have a favor to ask of you. I need you to be incredibly honest and frank with me. You see, I'm going to present you some ideas today that you may or may not like. In those moments when you don't like them, it's really important that you say, I don't like that. In fact, that's a great thing. I want to hear that because that's going to lead us to what you do like. But the key is you don't hold back. The reason why people hold back sometimes is they say, I'm trying to protect this person. I like this person. And I appreciate that. But what's going to help us both is if you're incredibly candid and honest. So, Greg, will you commit to being 100% open and honest with me in this conversation today? You're going to say yes. Now, what percentage of sales teams do you think start with an honest agreement like that, Greg?
Very low.
Less than 3%.
Yeah.
But if they did, what impact would you have? You can do that same type of agreement at the beginning of a one-on-one, right? I think you're a wonderful team member. I care about you. I respect you. And because of that, I'm going to be very open, honest, and candid. I'm not going to hold back because I feel like that's what you deserve. Is that fair? Yes. At the same time, I'm going to ask you to be honest and open with me. I promise that anything you give to me as feedback today, I'm going to receive it as a gift. So I want you to be totally honest. I'm not going to hold it against you. It's only going to help us in our relationship. Would you be willing to be 100% open and honest with me in this conversation? Yes. We start every one-on-one with that. And you might say, that sounds a little bit weird. It's powerful if you do it right. And if you mean it, it's very powerful. Again, but nobody does it.
Yeah.
So this is how you have incredible conversations. You meet with your child to have an interview. You know, I want you to know how much I love you. I love you enough to be honest with you. As we're having this conversation today, I promise I'm going to treat you with love, respect. I'm going to tell you exactly what's on my mind. Are you willing to receive that? Well, yes, Dad. Okay, good. Now at the same time, I'm going to ask you to be open and honest with me. You're not going to hurt Dad's feelings. Not today. I'm going to receive whatever you say as a gift. I'm going to receive it with a smile. I'm going to ask you some questions, and you might hedge to be honest with me, but I want you to know that anything you say to me is going to improve me. So would you be willing to be open and honest with me as well? Okay, Dad, I'll do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. It's a path for me that I'm connecting as we're talking through it, which is amazing. And just incredible work, something that you've been interested in for a long time. A lot of people say they're interested in it, but you've really done you've been through the different phases of how people communicate. I'm sure different environments. Most people listening in are either run a business or in a management role. And the resounding feedback that I get on this show is I want to be a better communicator, which is, it's interesting because like you said at the beginning of the show, that question is never asked, how can I improve my communication, or how can I get better in communicating? It's most of the time, this is how I'm built, this is how I'm made. And, I don't really have room for improvement. Other people do. And we kind of we point the finger.
That's right.
For the blame. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. One of the things that you notice today is I have all these little frameworks.
Yeah.
And frameworks are critical for your team, because otherwise they can't oftentimes put their arms around the thing that you just said. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I teach someone the pushback pivot, they're like, man, I used the pushback pivot the other day, boss. It was amazing. All right, good. See, we have a shared language then. Yeah. Oh, boss, I did the honest agreement the other day. Man, it was amazing. Oh, tell me about that. Right? See what I'm saying? Hey, boss, I've been using question first. Whenever I'm just hit with that thing, I'm just using the question first. Oh, it's paying off. See, these things. Yeah. Hey, I did this Vanguard the other day. It was huge, and it just eliminated all these problems before they even occurred. Mm-hmm. So the lingo matters, and that's why we teach in the form of frameworks. Teach in the form of framework. Everybody puts their arms around it. They understand it. You can like it sets up in the brain real clear, and now you can apply it easier. It's a beautiful thing.
It is. Yeah. Where's the best place for folks to go to find those frameworks or better, or connect with you in a way to start thinking about how they implement them? And I think their personal life and then their business, but
I've got a few books coming out on this. The problem is I'm really known for a book called They Ask You Answer. Yep. And it's a sales and marketing book. And I had to finish the third edition of that, which is called Endless Customers. It's coming out in Q1 of next year. Perfect. Then I have these other two books lined up. One is going to be Extraordinary Leadership Communication. The 4 pillars of extraordinary leadership communication. One's the 4 pillars of extraordinary sales communication. Excellent. And so they'll be out then. But if anybody reaches out to me on LinkedIn, I do have some stuff that I can send you that it's not public yet. That I leave with my audiences and the companies that we train. And so you can check that out. You can also go to questionfirst.com. And that has, questionfirstgroup.com, excuse me. I said that wrong. Questionfirstgroup.com. That's my name of my company. Best place though is follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm great on LinkedIn. I usually post 5 times a week, something that will make you think, and usually has to do with trust, transparency, communication, connection, things like that. So you can check me out there. I'm a pretty dang good follow.
I love it. Yeah, we'll definitely put those links in the show notes to make it easier for folks listening in to engage with you. Marcus, just want to acknowledge you for the light bulb moments you continue to create. I think that's where life feels magical. I think we're all seeking a feeling of connection, and that's what this show is all about. And those light bulb moments help people better connect with themselves and better connect with those around us and them. So definitely appreciate that superpower that you have and your interest in communication, because it's just so vitally important. I hope that in schools they'll teach people a simple module, how to ask better questions. I think that would benefit so many young minds as they go out into the world and try to figure out the world around them. I think this is so critical. One of the ways we like to round out the show, because the show is all about connection, building those trusted connections and communications at the core of that. What does connection, Marcus, mean to you in the world you're living in today?
Connection really to me comes down to energy.
Yep.
And shared energy. When you connect with someone, their energy multiplies. They feel different. They feel better. They feel something that is hard for them to describe, but they just know that they want to keep coming to you because they keep feeling that thing. The reason why people in life get depressed is because they feel disconnected with the world. They feel misunderstood. Everyone wants to connect. Anybody says otherwise, they're being intellectually dishonest. This is the most human thing we have, is connections. It's fundamentally why we are put here on earth. And so to me, it's that energy that we all share that can elevate each one of us.
I love that. Marcus, thanks so much for taking the time. Have a wonderful holiday. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.